Funnily enough, a subscriber and I were discussing the Club World Cup and why it should or shouldn't be taken seriously. Shout out to Ahmed. And what do you know, a few days later, FIFA had a big announcement to make in regards to the tournament. Hey, how's it going? I'm Adrian from Rabona TV. Welcome. Now, I found out about this story as it happened thanks to our sponsors OneFootball, the best football app in the game that keeps you in the know with the latest breaking news from the clubs, competitions, and players of your choosing, scores from around the world, live match tickers, highlights, videos, and so much more. There's a link just for you in the description that will get you a free, that's right, free download for either iOS or Android. Okay, back to the Club World Cup. First, the history of the competition, as we always do. But don't worry if you're familiar with it already or you're not interested and just want the latest information, then you can go ahead and skip to this time code. It's fine, I'm okay with it. What's a little less watch time in this dog-eat-dog world of the YouTube algorithm? Glad those guys are gone, am I right? Thanks to you for sticking around. So, there have been many iterations of tournaments that have tried to crown one club as the best club in the world. There was the Tournoi de Paris in 1957, which saw just 4 teams competing for the title: Racing Paris, Rot-Weiss Essen from Germany, Brazilian champs Vasco da Gama, and European champions Real Madrid. In fact, Vasco da Gama defeated Real Madrid in the final, a Madrid side that was seemingly unbeatable in international competitions, boasting the likes of Alfredo Di Stefano in their team. From this tournament, which was initially intended to celebrate Racing Paris' 25th anniversary, birthed the Intercontinental Cup, an official tournament created by UEFA and CONMEBOL that would pit the champions of Copa Libertadores, which in itself was a new tournament on the scene, up against the champions of Europe. These matches consisted of 2 legs, one home and one away. Quite the journey. With the most successful clubs being Boca Juniors, Real Madrid, AC Milan, and Nacional and Peñarol of Uruguay, all of which secured 3 Intercontinental Cup titles. Starting in 1980, Toyota took over the tournament and renamed it the Toyota Cup, making it a contractual obligation for the European champions to take part in the tournament, as they were scared that the European sides would pull out from going all the way to Japan. And remember, at this point, it was still just a matchup between the champion of Europe and the champion of South America, with the only change being that it was a one-off, winner-takes-all match hosted in Tokyo or Yokohama. No more transatlantic return legs. In the year 2000, FIFA launched their own official Club World Championship in Brazil, which consisted of 8 teams. The 8 teams were divided into 2 groups, with the top teams playing in the final and the second place teams playing for third. Corinthians won the all-Brazilian final via penalties, in what was the first and last Club World Championship until 2005, due to FIFA losing most of its funding for the tournament after their sponsor, International Sport and Leisure, collapsed. So, FIFA teamed up with the already established Toyota Cup, remember, formerly known as the Intercontinental Cup, to create the 2005 FIFA Club World Championship Toyota Cup, or the FIFA CWCTC, which rolls off the tongue oh so nicely, doesn't it? This revamped and restructured tournament took the organization of the Toyota Cup and added more teams to the mix, with the champions from each confederation all taking part in the tournament. The champion was São Paulo, defeating Liverpool in the 2005 final. South America had a champion in 2006 as well, but from 2005 to present day, the format has been the same for the tournament, while the host nation has been bounced around from Japan to the United Arab Emirates to Morocco. Real Madrid has the most titles with 4, Barcelona right behind them with 3, while the top performing team from outside of Europe is Corinthians with 2 titles. The one in 2005 and 2012. Now, the Club World Cup isn't really taken seriously by most fans of football, simply because it seems like a friendly tournament, given that it takes place in the middle of the European season and the dominance of European teams, largely down to economic disparity between European clubs and clubs from the rest of the world. Well, that's a major turnoff for some, as the scales aren't evenly balanced. Of the 15 tournaments that have been held, there has been a champion from UEFA 11 times, while a South American team has won it on 4 occasions. No other continent has had a champion, which removes the credibility of the tournament even more for some fans. And I mean, with South America being the only challenger to European dominance, they still don't even match up to European clubs that closely. After winning the first two tournaments, 2005-2006, from 2007 to present day, only one South American team has won the tournament, Corinthians, in 2012, beating Chelsea 1-0. But beyond that, every single time the tournament champion was the European representative, and their adversary in the final has only managed to score in 4 of those 11 finals. That's of course not counting the 2012 final when Corinthians were champions, as I just mentioned. Another reason as to why there's a lack of credibility is the fact that it's a tournament contested by just 7 teams, making it hard to get in, as it requires you to be a continental champion, but once you're in, as a European side especially, it's almost a guarantee that you'll be the champion. Keyword being almost, people, almost. Thus cheapening any sort of prestige that FIFA had hoped the tournament would have, because the European representative is almost nailed on to win the whole thing. Look at it this way. The UEFA Champions League is inarguably the toughest club tournament to win in the world. Compare the teams you have to go through in order to become the champions of that competition, and then compare that with the Club World Cup. There's a massive disparity in the competition there for European sides. Thus, the tournament hasn't really been taken seriously. Until now, FIFA hopes, as they have voted to completely revamp the Club World Cup in an attempt to make it a legitimate, competitive tournament. On Friday, March 15th in Miami, Florida, FIFA voted for and approved a proposal that would see the Club World Cup expand to 24 teams, the first iteration of which taking place in June and July of 2021. This of course would take the place of another FIFA tournament that was scheduled for that time frame and is also not commonly held in high regard, the Confederations Cup. Now, as for the allotments for each confederation for the Club World Cup, it hasn't been decided upon yet, but Gianni Infantino, FIFA's president, said that he would like to see this as the inaugural allotment. 8 teams from Europe, 6 from South America, 3 each from Africa, CONCACAF, and Asia, while just a single team from Oceania will make it. Again, this hasn't been finalized yet, but if the World Cup is anything to go by as far as allotments go, then this seems like the most probable scenario. From there, they'll divide the 24 teams into 8 groups of 3. So, this revamped edition of the Club World Cup would certainly take it from being an afterthought of the continental club competitions and make it into more of a spectacle that rivals the international tournaments held in the summer. Perhaps not in prestige or history, but at least, hopefully, in competitiveness. Something that the current iteration doesn't really have. Right away, by having 24 teams involved as opposed to just 7, you negate my point from earlier, where the current format isn't taken seriously because the competition between the European teams versus the rest of the world just isn't fair. Now, with more teams from each confederation, there's a higher likelihood of an upset. I'm not saying that it levels the playing field, because the economic and player power of Europe's elite teams completely squashes that of the teams from the rest of the world, but with more teams, there's a higher likelihood that European teams would take each other out en route to the final, leaving room for upsets, and thus leveling the playing field at least a little bit more. But that is, if the European teams even end up taking part in the inaugural competition. When it was announced that FIFA would be revamping the Club World Cup, the European Club Association, or the ECA, announced that they would boycott the 2021 edition of the Club World Cup. Now, the ECA represents UEFA clubs, 232 of them to be precise, and their mission statement says that they operate in order to, quote, create a new, more democratic governance model that truly reflects the key role of clubs, end quote. Basically, you can think of them like a labor union for the clubs that watches over the interests of the clubs in regards to UEFA and FIFA rulings. They work hand in hand with UEFA most of the time. So, 15 members from the ECA, including Andrea Agnelli from Juventus, Nasser El-Khelaifi from PSG, Ed Woodward of Manchester United, etc., all signed the letter saying that the UEFA clubs would not take part in the 2021 edition of the tournament unless the needs of the European clubs were met. Quote, "We are firmly against any potential approval of a revised CWC. No ECA clubs would take part." End quote. And to UEFA directly, they said, quote, "We kindly request that you, together with your fellow European FIFA Council members, on behalf of the ECA, urge FIFA to postpone any decision relating to the CWC until such moment when the legitimate concerns and interests of the European clubs have been properly addressed." Of course, FIFA didn't postpone and they look to be going ahead with the Club World Cup as of now. The reasons for the ECA in saying that European teams would boycott, strictly due to the fact that the international calendar for the summers had already been agreed upon in 2015, all the way up until 2024. Basically, a roadmap of the competitions to come from 2015 until 2024. With Gianni Infantino and FIFA agreeing to hold the inaugural tournament in 2021, this goes against what was agreed upon before, so it looks as though there's still a lot of sorting out to do before this Club World Cup becomes a reality. Because, after all, it can't truly be a Club World Cup without representatives from Europe. Now, what UEFA and the ECA would prefer to see is for all the different confederations tournaments to take place during the same summer. So, Copa America, UEFA European Championships, etc., all taking place in the same summer in order to not have a major tournament for every single summer. As things stand now, here's the roadmap for the next few summers. Copa America in the summer of 2019, Euro 2020 next summer, another Copa America in 2020, the Club World Cup in 2021, World Cup in 2022, etc., etc. You can see why they want a bit of rest for their players in 2021. That said, Infantino acknowledged that UEFA had a problem with the new World Cup and stated that the exchanges they've had with UEFA and the ECA since then have been promising. So with all of this in mind, what do you think of the announcement? Are you excited for a more legitimate Club World Cup, or does it seem unnecessary? My personal take, more matches for players isn't a good thing, as they are stretched pretty thin as is with club and international competitions, but if we have to have a Club World Cup, then I certainly like this version far more than the current one, as the added teams adds more competition and a bit more legitimacy to it from a sporting level. But hey, I'm more interested in what you guys have to say on the matter, so be sure to comment below. Do you care about the Club World Cup now? Would you care about it with some changes? Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed this video, or a dislike if you didn't. But other than that, I thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I'm Adrian from Rabona TV, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.